Grimace.
Hey, y'all. I'm Mary.
I'm Christina.
And this is True Crime, Tell You.
It is. So we had McDonald's. We ate some McDonald's like right before we started this, and I've got a rumbly in my tumbly. And so Mary, we were talking about that, and I was talking about the quarter pounder.
Here's the intro.
I'm the Grimace.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back.
Welcome, Yonders.
We are back for part 2 to last week's episode. But before we jump into that today, I just want to throw out there that we live in a world where we're trying to free Britney, but instead they freed Bill Cosby.
They freed Bill, yeah.
Today. So, okay.
They did the best they could. That was all they could do.
Yeah, I'd be like, listen, y'all.
It's easier to get out of a prison than a fucking conservatorship.
Clearly. Damn.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a hell of a good
Don't
point.
ever get into a conservatorship. You're more likely to break out of fucking San Quentin. I don't know where he was at, but I'm just saying. You're more likely to get out of jail. No, why did they free Bill Cosby? Is he just because he's old? Maybe he has like dementia or something. He's very old.
They overturned his conviction. Actually,
Okay. I mean, I've been really busy today, so I just briefly saw it. I'm like, what the fuck? And then I just kind of moved on about my day. But,
yeah, that's usually how, we all do. But it says that a Philadelphia court has overturned Bill Cosby's conviction for sexual assault, and he is free to go. And that's all I got.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe we'll get more details later.
Maybe. But that's also, I just got that off of another post on Instagram. So I'll go and
I'm
find
sure
the
there's
news
more.
article.
Maybe we
Yeah, I'm
can
sure
find
I'll catch
something.
up on it later. But anyways, I mean, yeah, I don't really, in that situation, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really follow that case too much.
I didn't follow it too closely. I mean, I've seen enough about it, but that was so many years ago. I kind of like, it was off my radar.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
hearing about that today was like really shocking.
And then when you first heard about it, it was years before it even went to trial or court.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I wonder if he can get his Puddin' Pop deal back.
Puddin'.
Or just bring back
Pop.
Puddin' Pops. I loved Puddin' Pops. I mean, I guess you can make your own, but do you remember Puddin' Pops?
Absolutely, I remember Puddin' Pops.
I don't think they sell them
Puddin'
anymore. I
Pops.
love some Puddin' Pops.
Yeah, and I still love the Cosby Show.
Yeah.
I mean, I do. The Huxtables. I mean, hey.
Yeah, so it's not fair that you bring back Bill without the fucking Puddin' Pops.
Yeah, like, okay, so
Bring
you
back
let
the
him
Puddin'
out
Pops.
of prison now, so bring back the Puddin' Pops, okay?
Bring back the Pops.
All right.
Okay, anyway, moving on. So one thing that we do want to mention is this week we reached our 2,000 downloads.
Yay!
And we have you guys to thank for that. So thank
Absolutely.
you so much for everybody that likes and listens, downloads, shares. We appreciate all of you.
We really do. We love y'all.
Last thing before we get into the case. So a couple weeks ago when we released the episode about Robert Johnson, one of our really dear friends, she's like family to us. We've
She's
known
like
her
our-
our
she's our
whole
cousin.
lives, but she's like our biggest fan too
Yeah.
of this podcast, and she interacts with us quite a bit. She's the one that won the contest for the coffee mug. She called me and she was telling me about, in relation to that case, she said she had just listened to the episode and that there was an episode of Supernatural that kind of touched on this. Now, I've watched Supernatural. I didn't follow it all the way through the series, and I don't think I saw this episode. She said it was like in season 4 that one of them went to some crossroads in Mississippi and sold his soul to the devil, and that I guess when the devil came to get his soul, he sent bloodhounds after him.
Yes, and the guy you're talking about, which one? It was Dean. That
It was
sold
Dean?
us. Yeah, it was Dean. I do
Okay.
remember that episode, but I only watched it for Sam Winchester. So
All right. Well, I still haven't had a chance to go back and listen to it. And I'm planning to, and I'm going to do that. It's on my list. But yeah, so you know how
Have you ever watched Supernatural?
Yeah. I was just saying that I've watched it before. Here and there. Jeremy, my husband, was
Yeah.
pretty into it. My son loves it. My son's watched like every single episode, but I'm just not that into it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good show. I just, it's not one of those that I
In my opinion, it's really good all the way up until you get to the 10th season, and then it's kind of like, okay, it's either Dean or Sam that's got something going on every season, so I just got bored of it. So
these people just keep dying pretty much.
I guess the same with what you said with Grey's Anatomy.
Grey's Anatomy, I watched like the first 3 seasons religiously, and I really have not watched it much since. I have no idea what the fuck's going on. I know that people keep dying. They keep meeting up on the beach.
And they hooking up. And
they meet up on the beach after people die. That's about all I know. I see these things on Facebook. It's like they go to heaven, and the heaven is like a beach, and you meet like all the loved ones that have died. Anyway, I'm confused. Maybe one day when I'm really, really bored, I'll go back and watch it. But anyway, we're way off topic. But anyway, what Rachel was trying to say is if you guys listen to that episode, we did make a reference where Robert Johnson, in one of his songs, he'd made one of his lyrics said something about putting pepper at the door, at his door. So, that episode kind of makes a reference to that. Because I guess Satan uses bloodhounds when he comes after you. So
who knows? Satan was he's
an animal lover.
He's a pet parent,
and I'm sure those were rescue bloodhounds.
I'm sure they were. They were a little rabid. Maybe they didn't have their rabies shots, but hey.
But he took them in.
He took them in.
He feeds them or whatever. So let's give the Big Red guy some credit.
There you go.
For adopt, don't shop. Okay. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for calling us and giving us that. We love the interaction.
Yeah, we do. We love you, Rachel.
Moving on. So this week we are doing part 2 of what we started, the murder of Brenda Joyce Holland.
Alrighty.
So as you recall, in the last episode, they had found Brenda's body in the Albemarle Sound.
Yeah. And
they had sent her to Norfolk for an autopsy, and they had notified her parents.
Okay.
Jerry and Shotgun Holland. So, and then, this brings us to where we're at now. So, word of Brenda's body being found starts to spread around Manteo, and many new theories start to emerge. Some people speculated that Brenda may have committed suicide, but Brenda's father, Shotgun, was adamant that that was not even a possibility.
I mean, you did say that, she was having like the time of her life down there.
Right.
So she was pretty happy, it seemed like.
Right. I mean, just because somebody's happy and go lucky, it doesn't mean that they cannot commit suicide. You see that a lot. But she seemed to have a lot going for her. She never, voiced that she was unhappy in any way.
Right.
And and her family knew this. And so her family argued a bit against the possibility of it being a suicide. So anyway, the investigators theorized that Brenda's body was likely dumped into the Croatan Sound from the Umstead Bridge and then drifted north to the point where it was found in the Albemarle Sound. The tide tables supported this theory. It was also believed that the body initially sank and then slowly rose to the surface, which would explain why it had not been found within the first few days that she was missing.
Right.
So after the autopsy concluded, Brenda's body was returned to her parents, and on Friday, the preliminary cause of death was released to Cahoon and the other investigators. It was determined to be ligature strangulation. When the full autopsy results were released, they noted that there were ligature marks around the neck, but also contusions of the face, scalp, left arm, left chest wall, left thigh, and left ankle. The results also noted lacerations to the hymen and the vagina, which meant that she may have been raped. When Brenda was found, her underwear and skirt were still on, which led Cahoon to doubt that she had been raped. And I don't know how that rules out rape.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah.
This is like just a small town cop, and that's what you think. So her panties are still on.
Yeah, her panties are still on. There's no way nobody could get under that.
No way. He did, however, suspect that she may have been sexually assaulted days prior to her murder.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I guess is possible.
Yeah, I guess. But, and then you're also thinking about, it's completely different. This is the late 60s. And of course, they don't have the technology that they have now.
Yeah.
Because now when they do an autopsy, they could pretty much tell when a person got their wound or,
yeah,
because of how your body heals and everything.
The technology was a lot more primitive.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, Brenda's funeral was held on Sunday, July 9th in her hometown of Canton. And this was, I think, the day after what would have been her 20th birthday.
Oh, damn. For real?
Yeah. And a separate memorial service was held in Manteo with the cast and crew of the Lost Colony in attendance. As they gathered for the service, everyone quickly noticed that Danny Barber was not present. Well, this was because the morning of the service, the investigators arrived at Danny's home, picked him up, and drove him downtown for yet another interview.
And this is which one? This is like number 3?
This is Danny. Yeah. Which interview? Yeah. He's already been questioned a lot. He was
and
the
he
one
even
that
identified the
body. Yeah. So they're really, looking deep into him. So Danny elaborated a little more on their activities that Friday night, but he pretty much maintained the same story.
Mm-hmm.
He said that they went back to his house that night, that they had a beer in the living room and talked, but that they didn't want to disturb Rodney Brett, his roommate, so they went upstairs to Danny's room. He claimed that they laid on his bed and took turns reading aloud from a Playboy magazine. Danny said that he made out with Brenda, but insisted that he did not have sex with her. He also said that during their conversation, Brenda confided in him about her dating Rob Breeze. He said Brenda admitted to sleeping with him and said that he had been rough with her. So this statement caused Cahoon to wonder if this could possibly explain the lacerations to Brenda's genitalia.
Right.
So after several hours, they finally had to release Danny, but his statement seemed to offer more questions than answers. The investigators theorized that perhaps Danny used his sleeping roommate as an excuse to get Brenda upstairs and have sex with her, and that when she refused, he lost control, strangled her, and somehow managed to get her body out to his car, drove out to the bridge, and dumped her.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah,
It just sounds like that's just
a lot
little
of work.
Too much. Yeah.
So Cahoon also continued to be disturbed by Danny's initial change in story. They're still not letting that go. Remember how at first he said that he had taken Brenda home?
Yeah, and then automatically he was just like, well, yeah, that didn't really happen.
So even though he's been sticking to this story almost the whole time, they're still suspicious of that.
Just because of that one. See, guys, that's what I should be trying to tell you. That one lie can make people think.
Right. So Cahoon and the FBI did contact Rob Breeze. They claimed that he had an airtight alibi for the night of the murder.
Okay.
So in the case file, not much was written about their actual interview with him, but I guess he said he had an alibi. They checked it out. They said it was airtight, and that's about all we know about that.
Okay.
But despite their earlier suspicions, they failed to press him in regards to the last date that him and Brenda had together and Brenda's claim that he had been rough with her. And they just assumed that since Brenda had not reported the incident at the time, that no rape had occurred, which we know is bullshit.
Yeah, that's completely bullshit.
A lot of rape victims don't turn in their rapists. And besides, at that time, women didn't really know how to identify rape as well as they do now.
No, because it was taught to them that
you somehow caused it or...
Yeah, that it, you know...
I mean, and if you had gone out with the guy...
Then that means that you had to give it up.
That somehow you consented to it even though you really didn't.
I think back then in people's mind, rape was just some stranger that just came up to them and they didn't even know.
Off the street.
Yeah.
So although they highly suspected Danny, they also had their sights on his roommate, Rodney Brett. Now, what is a true crime story from the South in the 1960s without some
racism and homophobia?
So this case is no exception. There's some there. Okay, so anyway, it was an open secret that Rodney was gay, and the investigators theorized that he could have killed Brenda because he hated women.
Bye.
I know, right.
Bye.
I don't know about these cops. But anyway, Brett had taken a trip to his hometown of Franklin, Virginia on July 11th and 12th to see about trading his car due to it badly misfiring. This coincided with Robert Midget's statement about hearing a car with engine trouble. You remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. So they interviewed Brett at the hotel where he worked and lived because he had just moved out of the house that he was sharing with his two roommates because it was just freaking him out.
Yeah.
So Brett stated that the night before Brenda's disappearance, he was half asleep in bed when he heard who he thought was just Danny in the house. He said he heard someone go upstairs. He then said he heard a woman's voice whispering and then heard the bed squeaking and assumed that they were having sex.
Okay. Well, yeah, I can see why he assumed that.
Yeah. So he said he fell asleep shortly thereafter and that when he woke, he heard someone quietly walk down the stairs and leave through the screen door. He said he never heard a car start and went back to sleep. He said when he woke up around 7:45 a.m., both of his roommates' cars were still in the front yard. So with the exception of Danny Barber saying that he didn't have sex with Brenda, their stories pretty much line up if you think about it, because if Brenda had just left the house on foot, she would have just quietly walked out of the house and you wouldn't have heard a car, or he wouldn't have heard a car.
Do you think there could be just a possibility, though, that maybe she did have consensual sex with Danny Barber?
Yeah.
And then, but it was just kind of like rough sex. You know what I mean?
Possibly, or...
I mean, it was consensual, but it might have been rough.
Robberies. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Rodney Brett denied having any involvement in Brenda's murder. He said that Saturday night, Danny called him at work and told him that he had brought a girl home the night before and that she had gone missing. And then he said that in a later conversation, Danny told him that he didn't have sex with Brenda. And when he told Danny that he didn't believe him, Danny became angry and stormed off to his room. Okay. So I don't know why Danny is lying about this sexual encounter between them.
Right.
But yeah. So somewhere during the time that Brenda was missing, a teenager named Bobby Long, who played a colonist in the play, contacted the sheriff's department to tell them that he and a friend had come across a grave-sized impression on the grounds of the play. They also found a gas receipt that had been signed Brett. I don't think they ever found anything. They never found anything on those grounds except for some of her stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess finding this receipt made them look at Rodney Brett a little harder.
Okay.
So while the team is focusing on the housemates, they receive a tip about another possible suspect. And this is a 19-year-old named David Whaley. Now, Whaley, he's kind of like your typical pretty boy. This guy was not from the island. He had recently moved there with his family after his parents' divorce. He'd moved back with his mother to be closer to her family.
Right.
His grandfather was a local Methodist minister on the island.
Okay.
But he had grown up upper middle class, good looking guy, went to like the best schools, but he had a juvenile record of minor crimes. So you can kind of get a picture of like what this guy is.
He's a fuck boy.
Kind of, yeah. He seems like one of those that, who was that kid a few years ago that used his defense in court? He did something. His defense in court was that he was born too rich. Or do you remember that?
No, I don't think so.
I forgot what the name of the actual defense was, but he was, pretty much they argued that he was too rich and spoiled and that he didn't know right from wrong. Like his, privileged upbringing somehow.
And this is America, folks.
Was a disadvantage to him. Yeah. Anyway, so
I'll have to look that one up.
So the sources told Cahoon that Whaley had been riding around Manteo and Danny's Road around 3 a.m. on the night that Brenda vanished. He was known to ride around town frequently, but had not been seen riding around since that night. Some who knew him claimed that he drank heavily, and he was described as being unpredictable when he drank. One of these sources was a man named Dennis, or they called him Den Midget. He was a mentally challenged local boy who was known as Manteo's unofficial watchman. He pretty much just was like the neighborhood watch of this island, and he would go around to like stores late at night and make sure
was
that
like kind of like Doofy from Scary Movie.
I don't remember that. I've seen it. But I remember Doofy. I don't remember him. Was he like...
He was like a school security or whatever.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, he's like the security guard of the town, and he's going around to stores and making sure that their doors are locked, and he's reporting anything and everything that he sees that's suspicious to the police, like right away.
I told you not to bother me while I'm cleaning my room.
Anyway, him and Whaley formed an unlikely friendship, and he stated that the two had been cruising around town the night that Brenda went missing in her neighborhood, and that Whaley had told him that he, quote, had to have him a woman before he went to bed.
Okay.
Investigators also learned that Whaley drove a 1964 Valiant that had broken down on July 6th. He had the car towed and traded it. The agents tracked down the car at the garage that he had left it at, and when they searched it, they found blonde hair on the seats and the floorboard. Yeah.
I mean, and of course, there's no way to tell if that's actually her hair or not. It's just a blonde.
Yeah, we're getting more into that. So Cahoon and the agents interview Whaley, who had by this time heard rumors that he was a suspect. He claimed that he did not know Brenda. He said that the night of her disappearance, he had been at the casino and then at a party at an apartment where 4 girls lived. He said that while at this party, he let a boy borrow his car to take his girlfriend home. He said that his car was returned around 1:30 a.m. and then he left and picked up Den Midget. He said that he had 12 to 15 beers that night while riding around town. But he said he wasn't drunk, that he just felt good.
So did everybody just drink and just go driving?
Yeah, pretty much. That seems like what they do. I'm surprised they didn't drive off into the fucking ocean.
Okay, so there's a reason why we have drinking and driving laws, so yeah.
Right. So anyway, he said that he drove by Danny's house a few times, but did not recall seeing a car or anybody walking. He said he dropped in off around, I think it was 4 a.m. I guess I didn't write that down. But he dropped in off and went straight home. He said that the drive shaft had come out of his car while he was in Hatteras on 4th of July and that he had traded it. He could not explain the blonde hair that had been found in the car, but he did say that the girlfriend of the boy who had borrowed the car was blonde, and he had dated a blonde girl over the summer and made out with her in the car.
Oh, so it could be her hair.
Right. It could have been, either of those two people's hair.
Right.
And then I guess they were asking him if, why he was riding around. And they figured that maybe he was riding around town because he couldn't go home. Because maybe with him being so drunk, his mom would have been mad because he lived with his mother. And he's like, no, my mom knows I drink. He's like, I walk around with the shit in my hand all the time at the house, because back then the legal drinking age was like 18.
Yeah.
So he's 19 years old. He can drink. And he's like, yeah, my mom was cool with it. I didn't care. Or she didn't care. And so, after interviewing Whaley, they just tell him not to leave town. And he is like, yeah, that's fine. I'll be sitting here ready for more questions or a polygraph test anytime you like.
Okay.
I might not be sober.
But I'll be here.
But I'll be around. Around the time of Whaley's interview, tips regarding yet another suspect are brought forth to the sheriff's department, this time a local dentist named Linus Edwards. Locals were saying that Edwards, who had a history of heavy drinking and violence, left his home the night of the crime in search of his wife, Dottie, who everyone said bore a striking resemblance to Brenda. This guy was a real douche.
Okay.
Yeah, he was known to beat up on Dottie frequently. He drank heavily. He had a history of assaults and violent incidences.
He sounds like a real nice guy.
Yeah. So at this time, Edwards was Mantio's only dentist. He was described as being brilliant, highly intelligent, and often bragged about his membership into Mensa. Do you know what Mensa is?
Yeah, that's where the people,
Smart People's Club.
Yeah, you have to have a certain IQ
to get in.
A certain percentage of the world or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess he was a part of this. He was smart enough to be in it, and he frequently bragged about it. Well, he had been married and divorced twice to his first wife, and by this time he had adult children. He had married his second wife, Dottie Fry, in 1964. Dottie had been married before and has 2 small children, but she had been widowed at a really early age. When they got married, she was 32 and he was 48.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty big, well, not too big, but a pretty big age difference.
Yeah.
Edwards was known to frequently cheat on and abuse Dottie, even to the point that she had been hospitalized, although she had never actually reported these assaults to law enforcement.
Bless her
out
heart.
of fear of her husband. He was said to be extremely jealous and attempted to control Dottie completely. But despite these attempts to control her, she didn't let him break her spirit. She still did what she wanted to do. She kept her friends, and these friends included Danny's roommate, Earl Mearis, who was a co-worker of hers. This drove Edwards fucking crazy that she was friends with Earl Mearis. He was insanely jealous about him.
What an asshole.
Yeah. So the tipsters were telling the sheriff's department that after Brenda went missing, Dr. Edwards was seen wearing a cast, and they believed that he could have possibly injured himself tossing Brenda's body over the bridge. So despite these reports, the FBI just decided that they're just going to focus on other suspects. They don't see all these coincidences as a problem at all. Now, it's just circumstantial evidence, but still, it's a lot of circumstantial evidence here.
Right.
But they just decided to look elsewhere. So soon, nearly everybody in North Carolina is contacting Dare County with their own theories regarding Brenda's murder. Many of these are racist theories. So a man writes into the governor and suggests that this is quote, a pack of lowly intoxicated ruffians, possibly colored, may have killed Brenda.
And here we are with the racist part of it.
Yeah. So this tip is rewarded when the governor personally replies to the letter leather.
The leather.
The letter telling the man that it was a good suggestion and assuring him that the Dare County Sheriff's Department was working diligently to find Brenda's killer.
Okay, thank you. Come
I
again.
mean, they shouldn't even
you shouldn't even did
that with
that.
their response.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Would have fucking tossed that letter.
So not long after this letter, the FBI start investigating 2 black suspects. A local white woman named Lola Mae Barnett claimed that she had been living with a black man named John Langston Daniels in the area where Brenda's bag had been found. She had since moved out of his home, and she claimed to have information regarding a man named John Davis Scarborough being in the area on July 1st. So the FBI go to interview her. And even though interracial marriage and relationships, they weren't illegal, they were still not very accepted.
Very frowned upon at that
time. They
time.
were frowned upon.
Yeah.
So I guess she's trying to cover herself here, and she's trying to explain to them why she was living with this man, and she's like, she pretty much just said, I drink so much I'll go home with anybody that buys me booze.
Okay.
And they're
All
like,
right,
girl, look, we don't care who you shack up with, we just want to know what happened to Brenda. So anyway,
this isn't about you, sweetie.
Right. When the FBI interviews her, she stated that somewhere between 2:30 and 3 a.m., a white station wagon pulled in next to their bedroom window and blew the horn. She said that John Daniels went outside to the car. She said that she looked out the window and saw John Scarborough sitting in the car with another black man. She then said that Daniels opened the back door of the car and laid down with what she believed to be a woman, but she could not determine her race. After a few minutes, Daniels came back in and the other men left, but when he undressed for bed, she saw 3 splotches of blood on his underwear that were not there before he went outside.
Okay. Did
Yeah.
she say that these splotches, like, were they little? Were they big? I guess they were big enough to notice.
Yeah,
but
noticeable. I don't know.
Oh, all right.
But I mean, like, you didn't fucking leave.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe she did. I don't know. I would have got the fuck out of there.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, you got blood on your underwear?
But anyway, so they tracked down Scarborough and brought him in for questioning. He initially denied being at Daniel's home, but says that he had been to a couple of bars with a relative from out of town and couldn't remember much after he left the last beer joint. With Scarborough still in an interview room, police pick up Daniels. They bring him in and try to play one suspect against the other.
Right.
Daniels told Scarborough that he had been at his house that night around 3 a.m., but that it was just him and his relative in the car. So the investigators keep pressing the suspects, but neither will admit to knowing anything about Brenda. And Scarborough even insists on taking a polygraph.
Yeah, don't do that.
But they tell him that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
So anyway, after hours of interrogation, the police have to let the men go. So then they start diving deeper into Lola Mae's story and find numerous holes. She had told a friend that the woman in the car was black and that she knew her. Well, when police find this woman, she denied ever being in the car. So then they talked to Lola's friends and family, and Lola's brother stated that Lola Mae would often drink to the point that she would hallucinate. She's not really seeming like a credible witness at this point. But then Lola offers up some possible physical evidence. She tells police that in Daniel's home, there is a hole cut into the floor, and that in that hole, in the crawl space of the house, there is a, quote, coffin type thing.
A coffin type thing.
And that this box may contain the missing blouse, because I don't know if I mentioned that. Brenda had worn a blouse that night that had not been found on her body.
You might have mentioned it. I don't remember you.
Yeah, I don't remember if I mentioned it.
But I know that
either.
you said she had kind of like
she had like she was found in like her little undershirt. Yeah, but she had a blouse on. Danny Barber says she did have a blouse on that night.
Okay.
So Lola Mae is saying that they may find this blouse and other items of Brenda's in this coffin type thing under the house.
Basically, she's saying that there's might be a ton of evidence down there.
Right.
Yeah.
So Daniels grants them permission without a warrant to search his home. Well, while they're searching, they did find a hole in the floor. Uh-oh. And in the hole, they find a large box. Well, they go to look in the box, and when they remove the lid, guess what they find?
What do they find?
Lola Mae, drunk off her ass and completely nude. I shit you not. And she's like, it's me.
So Oh, like she just pops out of like a birthday cake.
Yeah. She's like, you thought you were going to find evidence, but no, it's just me. And so even though she had like wasted all this time and all this effort, you know, they're just not even mad at her. They're like, Lola, get out of the goddamn box.
Just crazy.
You're drunk.
Bitch.
Go home. Yeah. So, I mean, they still kind of keep these suspects in mind, but for the most part, that's the end of it. So, anyway, while they're looking into all these people, Shotgun Holland is back in North Carolina. He's drinking heavily, watching Westerns, and fantasizing about killing Brenda's murderer, who he believed to be Danny Barber, because that's who Cahoon told him was his suspect.
Yeah.
So he wants to kill this guy. So Shotgun wants to kill this guy, John Wayne style. And
Shotgun's over there hyping himself up.
Shotgun's about to grab the shotguns.
You know,
yeah.
Hey, you know that Crime Mob song, Nuck If You Buck?
Yeah, that's
what he was doing. Nuck If You Buck, but John Wayne style.
Yeah, pretty much. He's got his chaps on and singing Nuck If You Buck.
Nuck If You Buck.
That's exactly what he did. Anyway, so he calls the sheriff's department and talks to one of the dispatchers. The dispatcher's a little freaked out, so she calls up Sheriff Cahoon and she's like, Sheriff, Brenda's dad, Shotgun, is saying that he's gonna come down here and kill the fucker that killed his daughter because you guys aren't doing shit about it. He didn't say when, but he's definitely coming.
And he thought he'd just let you know.
He just wanted to let you know. Okay, bye. and of course Cahoon's like, well, fuck. Like, I don't have enough to do.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Got this drunk bitch in this fucking box on the floor.
I just got this drunk bitch home. Now I got to worry about somebody driving down here and committing yet another murder.
I'm fixing to down me a fifth and just go driving.
Yeah. Just go right off into the fucking ocean like everybody else. I swear, they call that area, you know, the graveyard of the Atlantic because of all the sunken ships. But I bet if you dive under there, you're going to find a bunch of ships and an antique car show.
Hell yeah.
Where everybody just drove their car off the fucking island in the 1960s.
That's because everybody got fucked up and went driving.
Right. They need the DARE program in Dare County because these people are getting fucked up for real. Anyway, so in the midst of the investigation, Cahoon's optometrist, Ray Stoutenberg, calls him to tell him that he needs new lenses for his eyeglasses. And Cahoon's like, well, I'm kind of fucking busy right now, but I guess I need to see. So he goes to his office, and when he gets there, Stoutenberg tells him that he really should look more into Dr. Edwards, who is his neighbor. Dr. Stoutenberg stated that on July 1st at around 2:15 a.m., he heard Edwards screaming and cursing at his wife. Then a short time later, he heard a car leave, and he assumed that this was Dottie. Well, then about 15 minutes later, Dr. Edwards left in his car and left all the lights on inside his house. Well, that afternoon after church, Edwards' mistress came over to his house. They set the bar so low for this asshole Edwards. It's like he beats on his wife. He
cheats on her all the time.
His mistress, and like nobody gives a shit. It's like, yeah, the mistress comes over and hangs out. It's no big deal.
What a fuck.
Yeah.
I don't like this guy.
No, nobody likes this guy. So anyway, Edwards' mistress came over to the house, and him and his wife could tell that she was deeply disturbed by something. So the mistress tells the couple that Dr. Edwards was upset and nervous and planning to close his office and leave Manteo.
Oh, but why would he do that?
Yeah, nobody knows why. I mean, I don't know. So Stoutenberg pretty much tells her, well, he can't do that. You know, he's the town's only dentist. What are we going to do?
All of our fucking teeth are going to rot out because we all drink like a motherfucker, so we need a dentist.
We can't just go to the mainland to get a root canal. What the fuck? And she pretty much just says, there's more to it than you realize, and I've said too much.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Dr. Stoutenberg's wife eventually gives her statement as well. And she was kind of friends with Dottie, but she claimed that Dottie was really good friends with Earl Meares. And she said that the day before Brenda's body was found, Dottie was a notary public. And she had a car title that she wanted Dottie to notarize. And then, you know, she said that she had called Dottie, and Dottie had went downtown to get her notary stamp. And then she came back to notarize this document. She called the Edwards house, and Dr. Edwards just said Dottie wasn't there and slammed the phone down. Then she later heard Dr. Edwards chewing out Dottie for fooling around with notary public work, because that's not a respectable job or anything.
Yeah.
Jean Stoutenberg offered her theory, and it's pretty much what everybody else thinks happened. And she thinks that Dottie had gone to see Earl Meares after the fight that she had with her husband. And then when Dr. Edwards went down there looking for her, he thought he saw Dottie, but it was actually Brenda.
Oh.
And then, so they think that he strangled her and then dumped her off the bridge while he was in a drunken stupor. And this is why he was wearing the cast, because he probably, he hurt his shoulder. Jean also added that she was terrified of Dr. Edwards, but he's like everybody's dentist. And she said on August 25th that she had an appointment with him. So when she got into his dentist chair, she tells Dr. Edwards, "Don't hurt me." And he replied, "I can't do anything but kill you."
Okay.
Like, girl, don't let this guy in your mouth. Like, what the fuck? Get up out of the chair.
Dude, if my dentist ever said some shit
like
like that.
I know. You would go you go elsewhere. Go find you an Aspen Dental. There's like one in every town.
I'm going to Google and I'm not giving you 5 stars. Yeah, for sure.
1 star on Yelp. He threatened to he said he couldn't do anything but kill me. Yeah. So anyway, around this time, Dr. Edwards does make an appearance. He shows up at the sheriff's office one night and he scares the shit out of the dispatcher because he's obviously drunk and he's just ranting. And the dispatcher calls up Sheriff Cahoon, who's at home, and asks him to come down there because Edwards really wants to talk to him. So Cahoon hurries down to his office. And when he gets there, Dr. Edwards is pretty much just going off about how he didn't kill this Brenda Holland girl, that everybody's been saying this stuff and that they had their dates and their facts confused. And he said that all of these accusations and rumors were ruining his business and his marriage because beating the shit out of your wife won't do that.
He's ruining his marriage and his business and everything else in his life that's going wrong.
Because obviously nobody likes him. Because around this time, even his son-in-law was secretly talking to investigators. About what kind of person he was. But despite of this, investigators really just are not looking into him much at all. So somewhere around this time, this is like late summer. This is, August.
Yeah.
And most of the tourists have left the island and, kids are going back to school or whatever. So things start to take a paranormal turn. A principal at Salem High School in Smithfield, North Carolina, contacts the SBI and is like, "Hey, you really need to look at this kid that I have at my school." So this kid's name was Dupree, who was a kind of a weirdo and seemed to have an infatuation with death. They go pick up this kid, and the kid had worked in Nag's Head over the summer.
Okay.
Which is why the principal contacted them. Well, when they pick up this kid, the kid pretty much says, "Yeah, I really am fascinated by death, and I kind of like to know what it's like to kill somebody." He's like, "I kind of wonder what it would be like if I killed my sister or my dad. I wonder if I'd cry, but every time I ask myself that question, the answer is always no." And then he goes on to say that, he had made some statements over the summer to friends that he had killed Brenda or that, just made some really unsettling statements, but he said he didn't know her at all. So they pretty much realized this kid's really weird, but they didn't think he had anything to do with it. So they're like, "Okay, kid, you're probably going to end up in the backseat of a cop car again really soon, but for now, get the fuck out of ours."
And then later on, we found out it was Ted Bundy. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And this guy's name was Ted Bundy. No,
Theodore.
His name was Dupree. I don't know if anything ever became of him. Hopefully that was just a phase he was going through. It's a little disturbing. So then Molly Black contacts them. And you remember, this is Brenda's roommate.
Yeah.
She had since moved out of the Twyford's home. Well, she called because she suspected her boyfriend, the guy that she had been dating over the summer, because she had said that she had overheard a conversation about a seance that he was a part of, where they talked about details of Brenda's murder. And when she called them to her house, and this is really late at night, this is like the early morning hours that these investigators had to come out there.
Yeah.
She has one of these people there that was present at the seance, and she has this guy talk to them. This guy recreates the whole fucking seance, like hand-holding and everything. But pretty much when he explained everything that happened the night of this seance, it was pretty much just details that were in the paper.
Yeah.
So anybody could have gotten that. So anyway, they did end up looking into her boyfriend, but they pretty much just ruled him out right away. They decide that they're finally going to interview Dr. Edwards. Well, Dr. Edwards claims that, yeah, he did have a fight with Dottie that night, but that when Dottie left, he did go out kind of trying to find her. He said, but he went to the sheriff's department, and he said he talked to one of the deputies and told this deputy that his wife had left and asked if he could contact Dottie's mother to see if she had gone there.
Right.
Well, according to him, this deputy said, okay, go home, and if I get any information, I'll call you. So Dr. Edwards said that he returned home, and he waited about 20 minutes, and when they didn't call, he just went to bed.
Okay.
Yeah. The bitch is gone. Yeah. Pretty much. So they did give him a polygraph test. They did bring in a polygrapher to polygraph all of the suspects that they had, pretty much. Anybody that agreed to take one. So everybody passed, with the exception of Danny Barber. Danny Barber's test did show some deception, but Dr. Edwards passed his. But they said in the book that I used for this research, which we'll give you the name of that later, it did say that Dr. Edwards was drunk off his ass most of the time.
Yeah, so there was a chance he was under the influence.
And I mean, plus polygraph tests are notoriously unreliable.
And there's a reason why they don't use them in court.
Right.
You know?
So they pretty much don't have any real physical evidence to who could have committed this crime. Everything is circumstantial.
Right.
And they're really not even looking that hard into Dr. Edwards. That night that he had gone down to the police department ranting and raving, Sheriff Cahoon pretty much told him, just forget about this rumor and try to go on with your life, and took him home, and then told the FBI agents that he was congenial and just said that he had nothing to do with Brenda's murder. But it just seems like they're really not even wanting to look at him.
But he's kind of putting himself out there like they're not even worried about him, but he's worried about him.
Yeah, and everybody else is, but these investigators aren't. So at this point, this case is pretty much just going cold quick.
Sounds like it. They had a ton of suspects, but nothing
concrete. And so one of the reasons that they didn't have much physical evidence is because they completely botched this shit. So you remember that the crime scene photographer had rinsed off the necklace, and then they gave it back to Brenda's family. He shouldn't have even touched that.
Right.
But also, his photographs didn't turn out at all. When they got them developed, they were all blank. So they have no crime scene photos.
What the fuck?
And get this. So they sent Brenda's clothes. They wanted to send Brenda's clothes to the FBI crime lab. The clothes, for some reason, were being kept at the Manteo Police Department, even though Brenda was found outside of city limits. So the Manteo Police Department were not supposed to have anything to do with the case. Manteo's police chief, for some reason, these clothes are being kept at his office, and he's like, yeah, they're kind of stinking up the place, even though they were in a sealed plastic bag. So he decides he's going to ask this teenage girl to do him a favor. So he goes to her and he's like, hey, we really need to send these clothes off, but we don't want to send these smelly clothes off to our friends at the FBI, so we need to wash them.
Bye.
We need to wash them first.
I'm
so
leaving.
This girl washes.
This is ridiculous.
Why
would you
clothes.
do that?
I know.
There's potential DNA, even though DNA was not a thing there. There's DNA now. We could have figured out who did it.
This is where Andy Griffith lived, and I'm pretty sure that
Barney could have did a better job.
Yeah, Barney could have done a better job.
God.
Yeah, they probably could have hired the actors from that show to do a better job on this case. But anyway, so this is why they have no physical evidence.
I hope since then that Manteo County
No, this is Dare County.
This is Dare County.
I'm sure they've upped their game. I'm sure they've gotten a little bit better. But anyway, so like I said, this case is starting to go cold really quick. Well, then behind the scenes, like I said, the city of Manteo did not have any jurisdiction over this. They're not even supposed to touch it. Well, then Manteo gets a police chief, a rather ambitious police chief by the name of Ken Whittington Sr. Even though this is none of his business, Ken Whittington is pining for Cahoon's job. He wants the sheriff job for Dare County. So he doesn't think that they're doing enough to solve this murder, which he's kind of right.
Yeah, he is.
But anyway, he's determined that he is going to solve this case on his own time. So he's like going behind the scenes and talking to people. And one person that he's talking to a lot is Den Midget. You remember this is the local snitch?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's been picking up Den Midget a lot and interviewing him.
This is the guy that, like Doofy from Scary Movie?
Yeah.
That one? Okay.
Yeah, Doofy. So one day he summons just about everybody who's anybody to meet up. He calls the sheriff's department, he gets the mayor and just everybody because he has like this breaking news. Like he has the smoking gun in this case. So he gets them all there and he announces that he has solved the case and that he has a confession.
Okay.
Yeah, so he presents this confession and this is a letter from Den Midget. And Den is pretty much saying, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Den is pretty much saying that he was with David Whaley the night that he murdered Brenda. He's saying David Whaley murdered her and he was there.
Oh.
Yeah. So what he says is that while they were riding around near Danny Barber's house, that Whaley saw Brenda walking, stopped and asked her for a ride, or asked if she needed a ride. When she refused, he got out and attacked her, threatened to kill her, and threw her in the back of the car.
Mm.
Well, Midget goes on to say that he got in the backseat of the car, he sexually assaulted her, and then he said he tied her hands and feet. Meanwhile, Den Midget is saying that he's doing his best to save this girl.
Sure.
Yeah, but anyway, he rapes Brenda, ties her up. Den Midget is trying his best to stop it. And then they drive to the bridge. Den tries to get out, run away, and get help, but Whaley threatens to kill him. And then he picks up Brenda while she is screaming, and he throws her over the bridge. So if you recall, the medical examiner had said that her cause of death was ligature strangulation.
Right.
Well, this isn't mentioned at all in this. Den Midget said that Brenda was screaming and he just threw her off into the bridge.
Yeah.
Or threw her off the bridge and into the Albemarle Sound.
There would have been no way she would have been screaming if she can't breathe.
So, he presents this and he's thinking that he's going to get this big round of applause, but nobody really says anything. Everybody's just got this confused look on their faces. And Cahoon says, this is not getting out to the press or the family or anybody else until I take a further look at it. So when they contact Den Midget, and what threw them off, not just the medical examiner's report, but also this guy was mentally challenged.
Right.
And this statement, he had even said in his statement that Whaley had indecently exposed himself to her. And those aren't words that Den Midget would have used.
Right.
They already knew that.
That's something that he had heard from somebody else.
Yeah. So what they do is they go back to Norfolk and they talk to the medical examiner again. And the medical examiner reiterates that ligature strangulation was the cause of Brenda's murder, but then that she did not have any water in her lungs, so she didn't drown. The only fluid that they found in Brenda at all was some brownish liquid that they assumed to be beer because she had been drinking that night.
Yeah.
So then they go find Den Midget and they question Den, and Den pretty much just says, look, none of that statement is true. He said, I just wrote it to get Ken Whittington off my back. Because he said that Whittington had been harassing him and pretty much going to his job, picking him up when he was with his girlfriend and pressing him to write this.
Oh, wow.
So pretty much he fed all of this to Den Midget, and then Midget finally just wrote it down to get him off his back. So, yeah, after all, that pretty much goes nowhere. I'm sure he was humiliated, and Cahoon's like, you might get my job one day, but today's not that day, bitch.
Try again, bitch.
Right. So, anyway, nothing else becomes of this for a long time. This case does go cold. It is still a cold case, actually.
This is unsolved still.
It's still technically unsolved.
Oh, wow.
Everybody pretty much goes on about their lives. But then in 1979, Dr. Edwards, his wife, Dottie, had finally left his sorry ass.
Thank you, girl.
Yeah, she had divorced him like the year before.
Good.
So on Valentine's Day in I think this is 1971. Sorry. He calls up his doctor, his lawyer, and Sheriff Cahoon, and wants them all to come to his house. One of his patients he had made some dentures for. He goes and drops off these dentures, and then he goes back to his house and he calls these people to come over. Well, before they came over, he shot himself with a .22 caliber pistol.
Oh, wow.
which is a small gun.
Yeah.
So when he shot himself, he didn't die immediately. But of course, he was found shortly thereafter because he'd already called these people to his house.
Yeah.
Of course, he went to the hospital where he died 2 days later. According to the police reports, there was no suicide note, but people really believe that he wrote a note. He had to have wrote a note, especially if he called Sheriff Cahoon over there.
Right.
They believe that he had written a note and that somehow the police had either lost it or disposed of it. Yeah, and they think that he killed himself because he knew what he did to Brenda. So after Dottie gets away from him, she ends up running for a local office later on, and then she starts, talking more about this case now that she's out from under her husband. And she said that, she had left Friday. After that fight, she had left Friday night. She said she didn't return till Wednesday. But when she came back and Dr. Edwards saw her, she said he turned white as a ghost and kind of fell up back against the wall and said, "I thought you were gone forever."
Holy shit.
Right. And then she said that later on, during the course of what was left of their marriage, sometimes when they would argue, he would bring up Brenda. She said that he had confessed to killing her, and that he would bring her up and kind of blame her for it. Like he would say, "It's your fault that Brenda is dead."
So he thought he was killing her?
Yeah, he thought he was killing Dottie.
Oh,
because
my
everyone
God.
said that they bore a striking resemblance. Now get this. So here are the differences. Brenda was only 5'7", and she weighed about 120 pounds. And so she was very slender. She had short blonde hair, of course. Well, Dottie was also slender, but Dottie was 5'11".
She was a tall girl.
Yeah, she had the short hair, the short blonde hair. But Dottie was like in her mid-30s. She was like 35 years old. Brenda was only 19.
Right.
Now, of course, everybody said that Dottie looked young for her age. But still, it's really strange that you would mistake somebody else for your own wife.
Yeah.
But never overestimate drunk people. So,
That's true.
they think that in a drunken stupor, he went and killed who he thought, was Dottie, and it turned out to be Brenda. And he didn't realize it until Dottie came home.
That's wild as fuck.
And Dottie had said later that she tried her best to get Sheriff Cahoon's attention with this. She said she had brought this to Cahoon, and the investigators, but they just did not seem interested.
I wonder what.
They had their sights set on Danny Barber, and they tracked Danny Barber into the 90s. Like, they always kept track of where he lived. And even though they eventually let up off him, they would still just randomly call his house and ask him questions.
Do we know anything about his life after this?
Yeah, he went on. He ended up being, I think the CEO of a hosiery company, after he graduated college. He got married and just kind of lived a normal life.
Yeah.
And he ended up dying fairly young. I think he was in his late 60s. I think he died in 2011, I think they said, kind of unexpectedly. But yeah, so this case is bonkers.
It's fucking, it's a for real.
But the general case, so even though it's technically an open case, technically a cold case, and there's very little evidence, even after DNA became a thing and they could have gone back and, well, of course they'd washed off the DNA.
There we go. There's your chance right there.
But also all of the evidence that they had taken somehow got lost.
How the fuck do you just lose evidence?
Yeah. Brenda's sister ended up speaking out about this. And like I said, Brenda was one of 4 siblings.
Yeah.
After her death, her little brother Charles took it really hard. Well, she had her littlest sister, Kim. She kind of had a delayed reaction to her grief because she was really young when Brenda died. So she didn't really understand what was going on. And then later on, as she got older, she really, it hit her hard.
Yeah.
But she had later on lamented about how she really felt like the police department the sheriff's department completely botched this investigation and that they could have done a lot more.
I absolutely agree.
And she blamed it on a good old boy system is why they didn't want to pursue Dr. Edwards as hard as they could have.
That's exactly what I was thinking about.
Right.
Because he was, with a guy like that, with that much clout in the area, because he is the only dentist, the cops are going to see him for their annual appointments and everything. So, that's
and the evidence being lost.
So, of course, they want to put it on the college kid that,
Right.
The horny college kid or the gay guy or...
But, because they've, messed up the whole actual investigation, they never really had any concrete evidence on anybody. Not even Dr. Edwards. Nothing that they tested came back back with anything. And then, of course, they messed so much up.
Well, listen, I think they knew something. I think that's exactly why he had those clothes washed, because I really don't think a police officer in that ranking would go and wash crime scene
I don't know.
clothes.
Don't overestimate people.
I mean, that's true, too. I don't know. That just seems bizarre to me.
And besides, the whole island is fucking drunk all the time, so...
Yeah, so I don't know. But at the end of the
Who
day,
knows?
we still never figured out what happened to this lady.
So what I find really ironic is just like the lost colony of Roanoke.
She disappeared. I mean, she didn't disappear, but
we don't know what happened to her. Just like that colony, nobody knows what happened to Brenda Joyce Holland.
Well,
so if you have any information, if you were alive and around the Manteo area in the 1960s and you were somewhat sober half the time, contact the Dare County Sheriff's Department.
Or send us an email and let us know what the hell's
so we
going
can
on.
turn it in and take
So
credit.
we can turn it in, yeah.
So, that's the case of the murder of Brenda Joyce Holland. It's really sad. What I used for my primary source for this was a book, and I think it's a fairly new book. I'll have to look and see when it was published again, but this is called The Lost Colony Murder on the Outer Banks, Seeking Justice for Brenda Joyce Holland, and it's by John Railey. It's a really good read.
I think I saw that whenever I was researching the pictures for it, that book. Mm-hmm. I actually want to read that.
Yeah, it's a really good read. It's not too long. It's like, I'm reading it on my Kindle, so it's like 211 pages, but it does have some photos. It gets a lot more in depth. I hope I did it some justice. It's, kind of gets confusing, hard to keep up with, but.
No, I think you did good. Yeah. But I'm not going to lie to you. I'm kind of glad this case is over so we can move on, though.
Oh, yeah, me too. I'm totally ready to move on. But
guys, next week at the end of our episode, we're going to add on our reviews that we're getting, because now we're starting to get some reviews.
Yeah, they're interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, we got some good ones.
Yeah, we
some
got good
bad ones.
Yeah, we're really appreciative of that.
Yeah, we're really appreciative of the good ones. And actually, that'll give us some time to actually shout some of our fans out, because we haven't done that very much.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really know we had fans, but we do.
Yeah,
cool.
A couple of them.
And we actually have some people that really aren't fans of us, and we'll throw that out there too, because we're fair people.
Right.
But anyways,
hit us up on Instagram at
TC_Down Yonder.
Send us an email at tcdownyonder@gmail.com. Sorry. We did Instagram, email, Facebook?
Facebook at www.facebook.com/TCDownYonder.
And Twitter at DownCrime. Is that all the ways they can contact us? I think we
YouTube. Add us on YouTube.
Yeah, check us on YouTube. Listen to us anywhere. Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible,
and guys,
anywhere you get your podcasts.
And guys,
rate, review, share.
Listen. Go to Apple Podcasts, put in True Crime Down Yonder, go straight to the bottom and give us 5 stars. And write us a review if you want to, but at least give us 5 stars.
So, hey, don't wash crime scene clothes.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't use
wash
fabric
off
softener.
Stuff like
Yeah.
Yeah.
And watch out for those DUI checkpoints in Dare County. Oh wait, never mind.
And don't and don't take any kind of stories from Lula about any boxes in the floor. Lola, that's her name.
Lola May.
Yeah, that bitch is crazy. Don't go home. Don't get her drunk. Okay. Bye y'all.